Just give Honey people a second.
Would you like a chair next to you for
You can put it right. Yeah, I don't think he's gonna have anything to say. I want just for these cities.
Yes, I have lots of water.
Right there.
I know.
Least you're right.
He's a ninja.
Seriously.
Dharma is the whole spiritual life. If that's true, and that's going to be the subject of our Dharma talk today. Sister, can you hear me? Okay.
No.
No.
We just lost it for a second, but we're back.
That's our. Great. Could you maybe like move that table and slide down a bit? So and no, just move. Slide down a bit and. Here you go. Right. Take your time, take your time. Take your time. So in the room, only one has difficulty hearing. Yes, ma'am. You can come closer to me. Okay. So sometimes we use the mic in here. So maybe next session will be set up with the sister with the mic for in the room. Okay.
Yeah, everybody.
Not today. Incense burning, all space is filled with the fragrance. All Buddhas smell it from afar. Auspicious clouds gather everywhere. With utmost sincerity, all Buddhas agree. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the suffers and Dharma suffers. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about Nibbana, and contrasting with that, or what seems contrary to that, is friends on the path. Because on one hand, we think we are aiming for a goal. And I think part of the reason that we get confused is our interpretation or not understanding what the Buddha meant when he talked about Nibbana. So Nibbana was originally a Pali word for the extinguishing of fire. So it's actually sort of like Nibbana again, it's sort of like a verb, the going out of the fire. And the Buddha used it as a means of or one of the names for the goal that he taught. In light of the way the processes of a fire ultimately die or fall away. And so he was saying that there are ingredients to actually create a fire. I mean, I have all of this right, but you've got to have like something that can burn, like the wood. And if it's too dense, you have to have something that helps it to ignite, that can hold the fire until that which is denser actually heats up to a degree that it can ignite. And then, so that'd be like your twigs or your kindling. Then you have to have something that actually produces the fire, like the strike of a match. And you have to have the air that allows the fire to burn. And if any one of those pieces are missing, you will not have a fire. And so he talks about how all of these different things come together to produce our life, to produce the present moment. I was talking about conditionality, causes and conditions, and how when all of these come together, and they have to come together in a certain form and in a certain sequence to have whatever is present in the moment. Now, a fire burning was seen in those days as clinging to its fuel as a state of hot agitation. Keep all of this in mind now when we think about Nibbana, okay? It was the fire clinging to its fuel as a state of agitation. It was not a place. So when we think of Nibbana and we're thinking of going to a place, we have missed the essence, we've misunderstood the application, or which is a process of Nibbana. And because of that, we fashion an approach that we think leads us to a place. And that place, would you like some more? Yeah, oh, good. No problem. And we think that we individually go to that place. Oh, this is gonna confuse some people this morning. You're gonna have to listen really, really carefully. You don't have to throw out anything you already know or understand. I'm just giving you something to add to better understand what you already partially understand, okay? So don't toss one out for the other. Just keep that and. I love the word and because whenever someone and I are talking, like we're always A and Z, and I'll say something and she'll say, but, and it's just obvious say and, so I know her and means but, So you might as well just say but. I'm okay with that. And she's okay with that. And so when we think of Nibbana and the path leading to Nibbana, we're not talking about a destination. We're actually talking about being where we are and putting out the fires that have ignited within ourselves. And all of this talk that he speaks of about like unbinding or being unbound or to unbind is not from life, but we're unbinding from the fires of agitation. And then only life is left. And one can live a life with whatever is showing up in the present moment without the agitation that we associate with whatever is happening. And right there, I submit to you, is Nibbana. And if we understood it in this way, it would help us to better direct the issues of our life rather than to control. Things, meditating or undertaking a practice, and they take a solo practice, but they have not learned first the because without the map being correct. We'll like just go around and around and round and round. And we're still crazy 20 years later. It's some part of the instruction. Now, the Buddha said, who is going to be our teacher? He said, the Dharma. Who is the teacher? The Dharma. And so the religion is the respect that we hold for the Dharma. So we not be able to hold the what's that thing you sent me this morning?
phone.
Yeah, it's in the phone. The cannot hold the respect of the teacher as important or worthy. It means one cannot hold the Dharma. You have to understand what it is that you're not holding. You have to know where it is that you're looking. And that's why we have some teachers we like and some teachers we don't, because the emphasis is on the preference. But when we cultivate and develop a preference for the Dharma, anybody can become our teacher. Cultivating a preference for the Dharma depends upon something. What does it depend on? We might think we only need the Dharma. But good friends in the Dharma is the whole of spiritual life. So that creates a necessity for Sangha. So you have the Dharma and you have the Sangha. And when one is correctly holding these two, then it creates the ground for the appearance of the Buddha. And if we think that there is only that one that appeared in 500 BC, then we need to get a new spiritual practice. Thank you. where'd this come from?
The Dharma.
Okay, so this is Dhammapada number 392. Just as a Brahmin priest reveres his sacrificial fire, even so should one devoutly revere the person from whom one has learned the Dharma taught by the Buddha. So if our focus is in the wrong place, we stand a chance to miss that which has one of the ingredients of producing the fire. We miss the opportunity to create that fire. And so many of us have been going round and round in samsara because of our preferences. Our preferences for who the teacher is, our preference for what parts of the Dharma we like and who like, and the conceit. And that's why the Buddha spends so much time talking about I and uprooting I and I-ness and abandoning the I and non-self and no-self. And, it doesn't mean that I am not here. I mean, any way we want to spin it, there's something right here. Okay. And we can cloak it all in some kind of highfalutin esoteric jargon that makes it seem like, whoa, we're really, really out there. But actually, we're really, really right here. And if we're not careful, we will lose the capacity to actually penetrate and see the empty nature of all things. Yet all things come together. And in this combination, things are produced or made manifest or come in. So he's not saying that you don't exist, you're not there. He's just saying that we and everything else is a composite of ingredients coming together, producing something. A tree, a person, producing something. And he says, what reinforces our understanding of this is not separation, but creating a culture of hospitality. And that's why I said good friends in the Dharma is the whole spiritual life. Creating a culture of hospitality requires something. Like I had 5 Dharma talks today. Because that's how life is. I had an interview yesterday with somebody from CBS, and they wanted to do a talk or interview, and the person who scopes you out to see whether you're compatible with the talk show host, but we had such a tough time. Because he kept saying, he needs to feel like he's really in control of the conversation. I said, well, you'll probably need to find somebody else. Like, how did you get my name and number? Because, did you Google me? Did you check me out? That's probably not going to be possible, because I don't think that the Dharma, the Dharma, the real world Dharma is not topics. This is a world comprised of vicissitudes and opposites and how we relate to those situations. And that's our whole world. That's our whole existence. People and things and how we relate to it. It's not difficult to see that. It's in its most simple form. That's it. So this Dharma is about people and things and what relationship we have with it. And depending on on how well we do with that, how well we understand the coming together of the ingredients. We find ourselves happy, sad, angry, in sorrow, grief, lamentation, and or despair. And that sounds simple when you put it out there, you know. It sounds clear when you talk about it. But it takes a moment by moment interview with these premises, these teachings, these ideas, to find out, who am I? What am I? Where am I? Right now, in this moment. And the Buddha gave us an inkling of where to look. He said, mind is chief. Mind made are we. Whatever we think and ponder on, that becomes the inclination of the mind. And we will continue to lean in that direction. And the thinking and conceptualizing faculty, when that joins with the other bases by which we connect to the world, we form our world. Now, that's not to say that there's not something happening out here, because things are happening. But our view of what is happening and how we hold what is happening, that's inside. And so trying to fix the world out there, no, I mean, like, that's going to be a hopeless cause. We're not going to be able to do it. We're going down a one-way highway in the wrong direction. And yet, we absolutely could fix the world. But we fix the world by understanding ourselves and knowing, having developed the discipline and the desire to hold the world in certain ways. If we're not careful with this, our spiritual practice becomes you could call it a self-fulfilling prophecy. We become concerned only about ourselves. We become, and that's why the Buddha constantly gave a warning about that. And he would say, don't separate yourselves from each other, because ignorance has a propensity to be introverted. But wisdom is an abounding element that ripples out. And one becomes able to hold and encompass another, embrace another like they do oneself. And more than just another, but in time, more and more and more, just an outward rippling event. But somewhere along the hundreds of years, it got turned around. Maybe it had to do with the fact that the Dharma, that was an oral tradition. Now, didn't have airplanes, Buddha couldn't fly all over the place. Neither could his disciples, who were released to teach, which wasn't all of them. Didn't have, he forbid the riding on animals. Like he said, if you don't want anybody on your back, don't be on their back. And so they couldn't, didn't have a mode of transportation like that. That left feet. So they walked everywhere they went. I'm pulling in some strings around other things to really help you get a bigger picture thing. Which is why when they had the rains retreat, because we had the rainy season there in Nepal and flash floods. So he said it's dangerous for you to go out at that time. He said, so use that time to come together to study and meditate. And then when that rainy period is over, go back out. So some things came about, they were born of necessity, not because they have a great spiritual significance. They just make sense. But we have taken them and made them into something else and then built a narrative around it, that instead of using something for convenience. And I remember it's changed now over the last 15 or 20 years, kind of deeper, but when we first started, we got dinged really bad because, the rainy season is in good weather time in America. So this was the time to spend more time, with people. People could get around, people are getting out. So we would have winter retreats when it wasn't that convenient. And now they have the rainy season and they have winter retreats. And I guess maybe in 100 years, the rainy season retreat here will be gone since we don't really have a rainy season like they had there. And we have modern conventions that help us control some of that. Maybe that will shift, except for those who didn't follow his last instruction, which was, these rules we made. He basically said they're not going to be good forever, all time, all people. So get rid of them, keep the ones that should be kept. But they didn't do that. And we never talked about that. Because no one believes that today any high level of attainment is possible. And because of that, we can't grow and we can't grow. So keeping in mind now this image of the process of fire, a burning fire seen as fuel, seen as these elements clinging to its fuel in a state of hot agitation. And when going out, it lets go of the fuel and reaches a state of cooling, a state of freedom, a state of peace. Now, where in this body, because it said this is the laboratory of our experience, where in this body could this occur? It could occur in the mind stream, right? And it could occur viscerally. We feel something. We've coined phrases like feeling someone says something and that stabbed me in the heart. Felt the pain right then. I mean, it is a vehicle by which we know something. And even when our mind is not connected, we get some indications in the body. Yeah. And sometimes when the body is not connected, we get some indications in the mind. And some people dealt with the body, and some people dealt with the mind. But he began to put them together and said that we are mentality, materiality, mind and body, and we need to integrate. some people have the idea that the deeper we go in this practice, however, we segregate. And we ultimately eliminate the body. And there is just the mind. So we make an effort then to move towards this place of a kind of emptiness that is like extinction rather than nibbana, putting out the fires of passion that set us ablaze and bring about in us the mental feelings and the bodily feelings that cause us to suffer. When you read any Dharma, that's the basis or the view from which you should try to understand. Otherwise, we can take anything, and depending upon the view we come into it with, anything can say anything. So it's difficult to fix a problem with the mind that created it. So if we give more credence to what we already know while we're trying to find the path of liberation, it's a guaranteed bet that we miss it. Because we'll be trying to create something or we'll be trying to fix something with the same mind that created. So he says we have to come like with I won't say an empty mind. There should be something there. But with more of a childlike mind, like how a child is inquisitive, wants to learn things, wants to figure things out, wants to do things by themselves, and they don't want you doing it all for them. How they can find joy in the simplest of things. And it's only as the child starts to get older, he starts to develop things because this is yours. This is yours. This is yours. And then another little kid comes over and he picks up and he says, mine. Then he goes to snatch it and take it away. And if he didn't learn that in this life, then he learned it in the previous life, or the one before that, or the one before that. Because these are principles that keep producing certain conditions, and that's the rounds of labor. But what if from the very beginning, he was taught yours, taught, shared, give me, not just me and you, because babies love their mamas and mamas love their babies, and sometimes dad, but everyone, so from the very beginning, we always have to be careful. You have to teach children, you keep your family close and be wary of strangers. And we are wary of strangers. And out of that fear of one another, that non-tolerance, not seeing the others equal to oneself, not seeking the other's happiness as much as we seek our own, we've created a commodified world. It's a deep problem. We can't write a few laws and change them. It requires a fundamental change. Who has the strength for that? Who has the courage for that? Who has the willingness for that? I do to a certain degree, but I can tell you not fully. I'm just being honest with you. So we have to start at that place of being honest with ourselves. So we have a wonderful opportunity in life because we have the recorded teachings of the Buddhas, the Arhants, the enlightened beings, those who have abandoned the dichotomy between self and other, those who truly have a compassion and love for the whole world. So we have to apprise ourselves of it. Some people only heard one Dharma talk from the Buddha, and it carried them their whole life. They couldn't show up on Sunday or Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday, or or one Dharma talk had to carry them their whole life. No. How could that be possible? They'd go long periods of time, not even encountering anybody else who heard these sublime teachings, these ways of pointing out. And then they'd run across someone, they'd be so happy. And they'd sit and they'd discuss what they understood, how they heard it, how it impacted them in a certain way. And where one was weak, it strengthened his brother or his sister in a way. And sometimes he could strengthen, sometimes he couldn't. But it wasn't because he didn't try. Try, really try. Not trying to force, but just trying. And so the Buddha said, it'd be good for you as you start learning this to group together. It didn't mean that everyone in there came in with the same mindset or had the same issues to unravel or had the same understandings. That's what created the dynamic of the relationship. But sometimes we group according to, the parts of the Dharma we like, the methods of the Dharma we like, and if anyone is of another group, they might be Buddhists, okay, but they're not us. And we separated some of our contemporary, most profound teachers. Still propagate this ideology of separation. And it leaves us in a kind of impotent state. So Pandit Deepa and I decided we wouldn't do that. Because different minds understand things differently in different ways. And every practice is not right, or no one right practice, I guess, is a better way to say it, is right for everybody. It's for every mind. And because we have the Dharma in this statement, that is no longer just the Buddha Dharma, but it's this school or that school and this sector, that sector, this group, it becomes so fragmented. And that's how the Dharma in the age comes about, because it gets all fragmented and you can't get a picture of the totality. But some of us are trying to reverse that. Everybody doing what they can to make the world a better place with their skill set and with what they have a propensity to do. For me and Pandit Deepa, it was sharing the Dharma. So we focused our efforts there, but sometimes, like when we went to India, now because somebody said, come to India and teach us the Dharma, or the Lee, and it was such a great invitation. I wrote back and said, how did you find me? Just this little nun in rural North Carolina. He said, oh, I just Googled black nun and you're the only one who came by. I'm like, oh. So, but when I went there, I said, I can't teach these people, these people, they don't have water. They don't have food. They don't have, and when I went through the list of they don't have, I said, first, we have to do this, and we have to do this, we have to do this, and we have to do this, and then gone. So being there for a decade, but it wasn't until the last year, really, that we started sharing the Dharma with them, or maybe the last 2 years, that we started sharing the Dharma with them, because then they were more in a position to heal. But sometimes the work has a preliminary work that has to be done so that the work can have its effectual work in people. And if we make this Dharma just a series of teachings to think about and discuss and not to actualize in people's lives, we will have made the Dharma of no effect. So this guy said to me, bless his heart, he was such a sweetie. He said, I'm having difficulty figuring out how, he said, my job is to make sure that he stays in control of the conversation. So what I was wondering if there's a way that we could have some specific questions, you and I hammer out the specific answers, and then we'll line them up, and we'll have.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's all I said. Bless your heart, I said I understand what you're trying to do. I just can't see any way. I mean, it's no purpose. Like just have an interview with a book. There's no way we can do it. And then afterwards, I said, so if you contact me back to actually do the recording, I know you figured out something. And if you don't, I want you to know no harm, no foul, that I'm not offended, But at this stage, I don't feel like I need to do anything beyond what I think is the right thing for me, what's right thing for me. You see, you understood that and appreciate that. You said, I have to tell you, and I've done 200 of these interviews. And he said, I've never been touched so deeply. He said, but it wasn't that the Dharma was so deep, because I was talking about 101 stuff. But that it wasn't the 4 this, the 8 that, the 13 other, it's something out there, but just how you live the Dharma in your life. Is that I never heard anything like this. That's who you've been listening to. I'm sorry that I don't know about this platform and I haven't listened to one of them, so that's no offense, that's nothing against them. That's just me. I'm really busy and I don't get to search out and do all of these things, And he's a very famous man, and I get it, that's just me not having had the time. And he started naming off the names. That's okay, I understand. And that was it. So he explained what happened. He said, I had a trauma in my life. I didn't know I had a trauma. He said, I'm successful at the top of my game on television, blah, blah, blah. And when my show ended, I had a panic attack. I didn't know it was a panic attack. I thought I was dying, something was wrong. And I went and they told me what that was. And that particular therapist also work with mindfulness. So then I went from therapy to mindfulness. And then after some years, I went from mindfulness to checking out the Dharma. And that's where it is now. And but there's a place that we go from checking out the Dharma to actually becoming. And we are on that journey right now. I'm saying to you not to be afraid. Not to be afraid to hear something new, learn something new, try something new. Be inquisitive like a child. He didn't say you had to accept everything. He said, put it up against the sutras, put them up against the teaching and line them up. Now, if what we're doing doesn't lead to any internal wisdom that we have to keep running to see what the book says, then we know we're missing something, right? Because something should be produced in here. When certain conditions come together, like the wood, the kindling, the match, the air, it produces something. In the same way, when we walk the path, it produces something. It creates something that wasn't there before. So something that wasn't there before should be coming into your life constantly if you're constantly walking the path. But instead we become concretized around what we know, and that becomes our label, that becomes our badge. And we stick with this and move, and we can't progress. So we have a certain interest that begins to arise. And sometimes just hearing one sentence in a teaching differently can change the whole structure of appearances for you and how you understand something. And it ignites a flame that makes one, that reinvigorates one. I mean, and not only does it correct your understanding about this, but it also corrects your understanding about that, and that. And one knows one has grown, one has progressed. And so one gains confidence in the path. And it stops being linear. And it stops being singly directed. But it becomes like this. It goes in every direction, every aspect of your life. And so changes start to occur. And just not little baby step changes, but just, no, you have a wide filter, this exponential growth in every aspect of your life. You find that you become more confident. You find that you become more hospitable. You find that you become kinder. You find that you have more tolerance. You find that you can look at something on a little deeper level, so you see it on that level, but you also see it on this level. And you find that you can understand that that person sees it on this level, but that person sees it on this level. So you know how to talk to this one and how to talk to this one in a way that's beneficial and that's helpful to them. And not try to make this one understand what this person has the capacity to understand, and vice versa. So our capacities begin to increase all over the place. And in every aspect of our life, in our career, in our work, in our hobbies, in our play, in our spiritual practice, then becomes not this isolated thing that's set here and here's all the rest of my life, but it becomes the lens through which we see and live and move and have our being in life. This was not a drudgery for the Buddha. after he became awake. And you think he like just slopped around from place to place. I gotta teach you the Dharma, and life is suffering. And, it wasn't like that. But there was something that kept a flame, a light, so much that he himself shone, as did those who actually caught it. And I submit to you, this is not something that is that's taught, it's something that is caught. So we have ways first that we learn what wise ones had to say. And then we start to put it into practice ourselves. And putting it into practice starts with what there's a bodily practice of working with the materiality, and we call that tantra. And then there is that which works with the mind, we call that Mahamudra. And so we put these all together, the Sutra, Tantra, and the Mahamudra, or the Vajra. Yeah. And it's not saying that one is superior to the other, but that each thing in its own time, according to individual mind. The Buddha said, and the reason I know, let's say, well, the Buddha didn't teach any of that esoteric stuff. In the Parinirvana Sutta, which we're going to start studying on Tuesday, starting with this Tuesday night. So you could just Google it. You can just put in Buddhism DN 16. That's the Digha Nikaya Sutta number 16. And it'll pop up in Google. But he starts by saying, this time he's saying, your teacher. But at other times he says, when did I say I was your teacher? Because let the Dharma be your teacher. So then that Dharma as revealed, as walked out in him. So he said, I have not differentiated between exoteric and esoteric, but I have taught with an open hand. So that tells you, first of all, that he did teach esoteric. And maybe he didn't teach it to everyone because everyone wasn't ready for that particular, coming in with this mind stream means that the Buddha would have the capacity to look at one and he can know the previous lives that produced the mind stream that was present. So sometimes he only had to say a little bit to somebody and they awakened, or they gained stream entry, or non-returner. They were non-returner, or they were once returner. So it's not just the mind that we have since there was this manifestation, but he could look and see what was in the totality of that mind stream, and he knew how to speak. Now, if you can find a teacher like that, if you're ready for one, you should stick with it. If you're not, no problem. The teacher just lets you do what you need to do on your level at your time. But he just gently calls from afar. Never pressuring, never coercing, never commanding, but he just calls from afar. And at some point in time, if causes and conditions and circumstances come together, the call. And he embarks upon a pointing out. Pointing out is pointing to those particular things that hinder you. So you have to be ready for pointing out. Most of us are really not ready for pointing out. You know? Even if I am that way, I don't want you to tell me. So one has to have great regard for the teacher enough to allow the pointing out. Knowing that the teacher wants nothing from you. And that is the beginning of, or the recognition, I'll say, of affinity. I know in the Sangha who I have affinity with and who I don't. And yet, if anyone passes by me, I feel that there is affinity. And sometimes we really like our teachers. Because like we just like bond and there's that thing, you know, and we can get caught up in the bond and there's that thing. And that's okay. But sometimes to really reach our goal, we have to even lay that down. And then one discovers the true love for the student. But first there must be that bond of friendship. And then the infinity grows and develops. And then you can hear something and it can penetrate. Because what does it penetrate? It penetrates the armor of the self that needs to protect itself, to be protected, the self that is resistant because they don't want to change, the self that is deluded, that can't see it right now. And the arrow is trust. And to trust, one has to have courage. And to have courage, one has to have some guiding instruction that points them on a direction. And they have to cultivate that themselves. So this is a dynamic path. Don't get the idea that this path of meditation is like this folding in path. Actually, it's an ever-expanding path. And the times that we fold in, merely for the purposes of allowing the concepts that we already have stuck in our head to fall away, to allow them to just drop, to not attach to, cling to anything. And in that spaciousness, the full potential begins to come into view. A rose by any name is still a rose. And sometimes we hear things and understand them, so we hear and understand them by connection to the way we've already heard something and understand. And so a teacher might start with some way you've heard something and understand that, to take you to the next step. But then there comes the part where you have to drop off that understanding for a greater understanding. And it might seem like English and now learning French. And to learn French, we have to step back a little bit and learn some of the beginning things, like when we were first learning English. But because we learned English, we can quickly, if we're interested in learning French, we can quickly get up to speed. And it doesn't take us so long. And spiritual practice is like that. It's fun to learn a new thing. A lot of the things that we learn in the Vajrayana path, they're called secret, not because of shh, it's a secret. But because if it's shared before the ears are ready to be, are ready to hear, then one misunderstands and maybe more harm than good is done. Or it cuts one off and one may miss the opportunity in this life, even be exposed to. It's like explaining to a 6-year-old really where babies come from. There's too much information, no need to know at that level. So you find other ways to explain something like this. But then as time goes on, you need to explain to a 16-year-old really explicitly, and don't give them the stork story. Or that can then hurt them. And our spiritual path and growth is like that. So now we have entered another stage of our practice at Heartwood, and having practiced in what we call the 3 yamas and many, many esoteric practices. It's not strange for me, because there was something that we learned in that spoke of the spiritual energy that is transmitted from, I'll say, the teacher to the student. It's originally called the master to the disciple. But Westerners have a hard time with the concept of master-disciple relationship, because I put my pants on the same way you do. That kind of thing, that kind of conceit and pride we have around that. It's just not part of our culture, you know. So that's understandable. But what I say is that if one can open themselves up to the possibility that there is a kinetic energy that is transmitted mind to mind, well, if they try it, they will know. And one will find another way of gaining knowledge in the world. It's sort of like we do know it, because it's like a apprentice relationship. And a lot of things are taught, you know, to the apprentice, but more by observing, you know, and he gets to know the mind of his teacher. And he thereby gains the same wisdom as his teacher without having to study every single thing in the manual. So some things are better caught than the military. And this is called the court. So we're dividing up our teaching times or our sharing times on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. Sunday's more of an encouragement to open your mind. Tuesday gets more into esoteric and practice for mind-to-mind transmission. And Thursday is where we can talk about what's in our mind coming up. It's what the Sangha shares with each other, so that we don't think the Sangha has nothing to teach us, and so that we don't think that we can learn from each other. And whenever you're adding something, there's a, it disturbs the energy, because we just don't like change. We just don't. But the Buddha said, everything. I'm closing now, but we sang a song for Brewmaster when we went out to California. We dedicated a song, and it was "The Dharma Stays the Same." And he was so sweet, because, and he said, he said, "Oh, that's good." He said, "You should professionally record it, and then send it back." He said, "But I'm going to tell you something." He said, "In 2 years, you're going to rewrite that song." that's what I said. 2 years, going to rewrite that song. So then I wanted to explain, but what I mean about the Dharma stays the same is the Dharma has never lost its power. If it's not presenting powerfully in the world today, then we have changed. The Dharma has not changed. That was my idea around it. And I wanted to explain all of that to him, but I just listened to what he said. And it wasn't necessary to give him my spin on what I meant, because he was letting me know something about the attainment that was imminent if I could receive it. Instead of me fighting for my view about what I'm trying to say here, which doesn't mean that wasn't like an all right view, but he was telling me something else. That's what I'm saying. And so that's how we have to listen to the Dharma, as not refuting immediately when we hear something, putting it up against something else, but what else is being presented to me right now? What else? This and this, not this or this. And so in that sense, the Dharma stays the same. But in another sense, the Dharma is always changing, because everything is based on cause and condition. And so we have to hold these two extremes in a certain way and find out where on that spectrum, whatever's happening right now, needs to register to be balanced. That's called the middle way. And that's where we will find our peace and our joy and our clarity, our spirit of hospitality, our compassion, and our love for the pain that ultimately will give us a kind of love and appreciation for this life. Not as the world gives us, because it gives anything, but that which leads us to nirvana. And we can let this world come, and we can let it go, but we'll find that does not have a life with us. And we forget about ourselves, and we can really become useful to living beings, not just in this world, but in many worlds. May you be well and happy, and peaceful, and no harm come to you, and no danger. May you always be able to endeavor to come. And may you quickly enter the joyful path of good fortune. Indeed.